Hi everybody, we're back on the endocrine system and this is module number 2. I'm going to talk about the hormones themselves. So we're going to go over each of the hormones and talk about where it's made, what the target of that hormone is, and then how it's regulated. So the hypothalamus is kind of the master gland. I know a lot of books say the pituitary gland is, but the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus is located, remember from our first module, slightly above and behind the pituitary gland, and it is connected to it via the infundibulum. It controls the release of two of the hormones from the pituitary gland by a nerve impulse. So when the nerve runs down the infundibulum and zaps the posterior pituitary to cause the release of either oxytocin or vasopressin, or ADH. It's connected via a blood vessel through the infundibulum to the anterior pituitary. And the 6 hormones that come out of the hypothalamus control the release of a hormone from the anterior pituitary. It also can control the release of epinephrine, the hypothalamus, from the adrenal medulla. The adrenal gland, remember, is located down on top of the kidney. And so the hypothalamus controls that as well. So here's a picture of the hypothalamus and this little connection there between it and the anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary is the infundibulum. The little green things are those nerves that are controlled from the hypothalamus that control the release of ADH and oxytocin from the posterior pituitary, and via blood and hormones that come out of the hypothalamus control the release of a bunch of different hormones from the anterior pituitary. The nervous system also controls release of epinephrine from the adrenal medulla during stress situations. All right, so the hypothalamus is sitting up there in your brain, and it basically controls homeostasis. It tries to keep all your body functions working like normal and boring, and your blood pressure, your breathing. And part of the way it does this is control hormones. The hypothalamus will detect, there's little osmoreceptors there that detect whether you're dehydrated or not, for example, and it will cause release of ADH. ADH is actually produced up in the hypothalamus, but it's stored and released from the posterior pituitary when the hypothalamus detects that you're dehydrated. Oxytocin is released from again, stored at the posterior pituitary and is released from there when there's stimulus like a baby starts to nurse or even when they cry sometimes. And also it induces labor. And nobody's quite sure what starts that process, but oxytocin causes the uterine wall to contract. Okay, so ADH is also known as anti-diuretic hormone. Diuretic is something that makes you pee, so an anti-diuretic makes you not pee. ADH is sometimes also referred to as vasopressin. It comes out of the posterior pituitary, it targets the kidney, and it tells the kidney to save water. So again, the source or the place it is released from is posterior pituitary, that's the gland. It targets the kidney, and its change in function is to reduce water loss. The regulation of this hormone basically is the hypothalamus detecting the osmolarity of your blood. If you have really high salt content, you're probably dehydrated and you need ADH to save some water. If the content is low osmotic pressure, then your kidney is not going to be stimulated to save water and you're going to urinate more. So if you don't have any ADH, you pee yourself to death. Actually, you just lose water all the time. It can be very dangerous. Oxytocin also comes out of the posterior pituitary. It targets the uterus or the breast. Okay, and in the uterus, it stimulates labor, causes contraction. Pitocin is the synthetic form of oxytocin that they use to induce labor. It also causes milk ejection. It opens the mammary ducts and glands so milk can come out. Sometimes a baby has to suck for this stimulation so the nervous system knows that there's something there. But eventually, even the baby crying, it will trigger that response. Sometimes another baby crying can cause milk letdown, and that can be embarrassing for the woman. its regulation mostly is, again, nerve impulse, the baby crying or the baby stimulating around the nipple area to induce milk letdown. Recently, this hormone has been detected in men, even when men feed babies by a bottle, obviously. Oxytocin is released, and it's thought to help with the bonding or bonding between a parent and a child. Obviously, moms have this, being nursing all the time, but they found that it also goes up during sex, and it's now been called the love hormone because it increases bonding. And they've even looked at research about how to use it possibly to help bonding with autistic children, because one of the problems they have is human touch and bonding. So there's lots of interesting information out there about oxytocin. All right, like I said previously or alluded to, there are a whole bunch of hormones released by the hypothalamus that travel down the blood vessel in the infundibulum to the anterior pituitary. And previously I had this on the hormone list to memorize all these, but I found that that's a little bit useless and confusing. It seems silly that you have thyrotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus that travels all the way down that 2 millimeters to the anterior pituitary and causes the release of thyroid stimulating hormone, which then travels to the thyroid gland to release thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is the one that increases your metabolism and plays a big role in carbohydrate breakdown and heart rate and bone development. But it's a 3-tier pathway. You can see that here. Thyrotropin hormone causes the release of thyroid stimulating hormone, which causes the release of thyroid hormone. So you're not going to necessarily be asked questions about the hypothalamic hormones. Just know they exist to control something released from the pituitary gland, which control the hormone at the third level. There's a couple of exceptions to that. Prolactin, there's no third level there. It causes milk synthesis. And growth hormone causes growth, but indirectly through another paracrine factor. So lots of different interesting information about this, and we'll go over these one by one, but you're not going to be, these up at the top, these hypothalamic hormones aren't going to necessarily be on any memorization list. You do have a hormone study sheet at the end of the first lab in your lab manual. I included it in the lab manual. I would highly recommend filling that out and memorizing it or making yourself flashcards. All right, so let's again talk about this pathway from the hypothalamus to the pituitary gland to some target gland that causes the release of the active hormone. And these are the four that we're going to focus on first. Thyroid hormone, adrenal hormones, the glucocorticoids, FSH and LH, which are going to play a role in sex organs and ovulation and sperm and egg development. And we'll go into much more detail in these in the reproductive system. All right, so again, hypothalamus, pituitary, endocrine gland, target is kind of the overall tree, but they work or they regulate themselves by a negative feedback pathway. So for example, thyrotropin releasing hormone is released from the hypothalamus that causes the release of TSH from the pituitary, which causes release of thyroid hormone from the thyroid gland. Thyroid hormone will feed back when it gets high enough and turn off the production of the ones above it. TSH will turn off the one above it. That keeps your thyroid hormone level about level all of the time. Okay? So here's a picture. Thyrotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus causes the release of TSH, which causes the release of thyroid hormone. And both of these, any one below can inhibit the one above. Okay, so TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, basically tells the thyroid gland to start secreting thyroid hormone. And the thyroid gland hormone, T3 or T4, can turn off the ones above it. The really active one, or the one that's going to do anything in this picture here, is thyroid hormone itself. Thyroid hormone is the only molecule in the human body that includes iodine, and that's where the 3 and the 4 come in. T4 is actually made first with 4 iodine molecules, and then the more active form of thyroid hormone is T3. One of the iodines has been removed. Again, regulated by the amount of TSH. Okay, it goes out of the thyroid gland, thyroid hormone does, and it targets almost all cells, but mainly the liver, bone, adipose cells. It helps with bone development, particularly during fetal development, and it plays a huge role in metabolism, particularly carbohydrate metabolism. And so if you don't have enough thyroid hormone, you won't metabolize. It slows down your metabolism, slows down your heart rate. You'll actually gain weight. On the other hand, too much thyroid hormone can make you wired all the time, causes eyes to bug out, your heart rate to go really high. It can be quite dangerous. It's also very important that pregnant women have enough thyroid hormone, because if they don't, their baby's bones don't develop, but it also slows brain development. So the kid might not be so smart or not have all the brain development that should happen during fetal development. The second one is cortisol. Again, it's this 3-tier pathway, CRH to ACTH to cortisol. Corticotropin-releasing hormone comes out of the hypothalamus, stimulates the anterior pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, which causes the adrenal gland, particularly the adrenal cortex, to release cortisol. Cortisol is the one that does stuff in the body that's going to make a difference in you, but it's a 3-pathway system. Cortisol, the main thing it does is increase energy. Okay, it targets the liver, fat, and muscle mainly, and it causes them to release glucose and fat and amino acids. So you have this extra energy in the blood to deal with long-term stress. So when you think cortisol, you think release of energy, and initially it can cause you to lose weight because this energy is being released. But if you don't burn it, you pack it all back on as fat. So long-term release of cortisol generally makes people fat, not thinner. There's other things that cortisol does, and that's what this picture is showing. Besides increase your blood sugar and that type of thing, it tends to suppress the immune system. So long-term stress can make you more likely to get sick, which that kind of sucks because that's what you need when you're stressed, right? To get sick. But we use it. We use prednisone, which is a cortisol-like molecule, to suppress inflammation during, like when we get sports injuries in particular, or you hear somebody, oh, I got a cortisone shot. That's what it does. They inject it into your knee or your shoulder or wherever, and it reduces inflammation, which reduces pain. So there's some good things about it, but it's not something you want to take long term. The next one, another kind of 3-tiered pathway, gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus actually causes the release of 2 hormones from the anterior pituitary, luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone. Now this pathway is a little different than the other two because GnRH is not released until puberty. So teenagers release this, cause release of LH and FSH, and if you're a boy teenager, it tells you to start producing sperm. That's what FSH does. And LH causes release or production of testosterone. If you're a girl teenager, FSH starts the production of eggs, and LH is the hormone that's going to be involved in ovulation. So at the end, the testes and the ovaries are going to produce estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone as the final hormone, and what causes a lot of these actions to happen, or different things, like in teenage boys, they start to grow facial hair and all that kind of stuff, increase the size of the genitals, increase muscle mass, that type of thing. And estrogen in girls, some of the similar things again. And we'll talk about all that a lot more when we get to the reproductive section. So right now you should remember that these come out at puberty, and LH and FSH from the anterior pituitary is what's telling those glands, the ovaries or the testes, depending on which one you have, to release estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Growth hormone is controlled by 2 different hormones, growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone inhibiting hormone. Then they have other names, somatomedin and somatostatin, if you look this up on the web. But regardless, growth hormone comes out of the anterior pituitary and causes growth. This one's not too hard. It works through a paracrine factor called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. And it turns out if you have plenty of growth hormone but you can't make IGF-1, you're still short. So that IGF-1 is pretty important in this pathway. As a side effect, growth hormone also causes a breakdown of fat. So for a while, this was like, woohoo, here's a hormone that will make you grow muscle or hold muscle growth and burn fat at the same time. It's actually illegal to give adults growth hormone, and it can be kind of dangerous because you don't want too much growth hormone. That can cause some bad side effects in adults. And it's generally not used as a weight loss method at all because of some of the side effects. And it has to be injected because it's a protein hormone. All right, the last one is the hormone prolactin, which again, like growth hormone, has a releasing hormone, prolactin releasing hormone, and an inhibiting hormone, prolactin inhibiting hormone, which is now known to be dopamine. That's new. That has, wasn't initially known for a while, but it is now known to be dopamine. Prolactin targets the breast and causes the milk to be made. So oxytocin causes milk to be released, but prolactin causes the synthesis or production of milk. Prolactin is also produced in men, and they're not quite sure why. They don't produce milk, so there's some differing opinions on what prolactin does in men. So hormones released into the blood from the hypothalamus all target what cells? All the cells in the anterior pituitary. And the receptors, because they're all protein hormones, are all going to be on the cell surface. All right, a couple other hormones you should know about from the rest of the glands. Calcitonin is released from the thyroid gland. It targets mostly the bone and the kidney and tells them to basically lower calcium. Calcitonin is a calcium lowering hormone. Okay, it tells the bones to soak it up and the kidneys to release it, excrete it. So if your calcium levels get too high, calcitonin is released to tell the kidney to pee it out and the bones to soak it up. The opposite hormone of that is parathyroid hormone, which is released from the parathyroid gland. So when your blood calcium levels get too low, parathyroid hormone is released and says, hey kidneys, you need to save it, and hey bones, you need to release it. It also induces the synthesis or production or whatever you want to call it of vitamin D. Vitamin D is involved in helping you absorb calcium, which is why sometimes people who take calcium supplements take it with vitamin D because you need vitamin D to absorb the calcium. So calcitonin and parathyroid kind of work the opposite. Okay, parathyroid wants you to increase your blood calcium, so it tells your bones to release it and your kidneys to save it. Calcitonin wants to lower your blood calcium, so it tells your kidneys to pee it out and your bones to soak it up. I think I have a picture of that after the vitamin D one. Vitamin D can be a hormone and a vitamin, and when your blood calcium levels go too low, parathyroid will induce the production of vitamin D. You can make your own if you are one of the steps happens in your skin and you need UV light for that to happen, so you need to be exposed to the sun. And we in Michigan don't have a lot of that exposure except in the summertime because we don't have a lot of skin exposed to very much sun in the wintertime, so we have to consume it. But you can make it, and it will, and the function of vitamin D is to help absorb calcium. So here's a picture of that balance here. You got blood calcium. If it goes too high, calcitonin is released to bring it back down. If it goes too low, parathyroid hormone is released to bring it back up. And again, parathyroid hormone can also tell you to make more vitamin D. So if you think about it, there's 3 hormones involved in regulating calcium. Calcium must be pretty darn important in the human body. And it is. Plays a role in a lot of different things. And you've already talked about a couple of those, how important it was for bone growth and maintenance, and how important it is for muscle contraction. So you've already done 2 in A&P1. Calcium was also involved in the neurotransmitter release, if you remember, at the end of a nerve impulse. So 3 of them you've done in A&P1. And we're going to talk about its huge important role in the blood clotting process and in heart muscle contraction in the second goal of A&P2. So if a person had too much calcium in their blood, would it be due to too much parathyroid hormone, too much vitamin D, or too little calcitonin? The answer is it could be all 3 of those. So it's really hard to tell until you measure the different levels of hormones. And how do you figure out the level of a hormone in a person? Go back to the definition of a hormone. It's a chemical in the blood, changes the function of a target cell, so you got to check their blood. All right, the adrenal gland, located on top of the kidneys, basically has 2 regions, the medulla and the cortex. The medulla is the middle, and that's where epinephrine is released, and the cortex is the outside. The outside hormones, or the hormones that are released from the cortex, include cortisol and aldosterone. And those are the next 2 hormones that we're going to talk, or the next 3 hormones that we're going to talk about. Epinephrine is released from the adrenal medulla, and it's released when you are stressed. It targets almost every cell in the body. It tells the heart to speed up, the breathing rate to increase, the bronchial tubes to dilate. It tells your liver to release and make sugar. It tells your eyes to dilate, your hearing gets a little bit better, and even your brain function, you get a little more alert. The idea is you got to go save yourself, so you need all these things to deal with that. Okay. Aldosterone is a hormone released from the adrenal cortex, and it's controlled by another whole system called renin-angiotensin, and we'll talk about that when we get to the urinary system. But think of it as a way to save sodium. So when your sodium levels go down, aldosterone is released. It tells your kidneys to save it. Okay, so save sodium. And when you save sodium, because of the rules of osmosis, you save water. Unfortunately, when you save sodium, a positively charged ion, another positively charged ion has to go the opposite direction. So when you save sodium, you actually lose potassium. And those of you going into medicine, you'll learn about electrolyte balance and how to help that with people. You almost always have to balance their sodium before you can balance their potassium because of this hormone. So aldosterone saves sodium, and in turn that causes you to save water. So you're going to actually pee less. The adrenal gland, as a side note, also secretes some androgens, which are testosterone-like compounds. In men, this doesn't matter because the testes produce so much, but in women, this is your only source of testosterone, and it plays a role in sex drive. So you need your adrenal gland for that. Okay, the pancreas secretes, did I forget cortisol? Did we have to go back to cortisol? Did I skip that one? Oh no, we did that at the beginning. I think I already did cortisol as an energy one. I'm sorry about that. Okay, the pancreas, located kind of behind or underneath the stomach, is both an exocrine and an endocrine gland. And if you remember back in Module 1, exocrine means it is secreted outside the body, and it secretes digestive enzymes, the pancreas does, so it's considered exocrine. Dumps it into the digestive system during digestion of food, and we'll talk about that when we get to that section. Here we're going to talk about the islets of Langerhans, the kinds of cells that produce glucagon, and the beta cells which produce insulin. So the alpha cells produce glucagon, and the beta cells produce insulin. These 2 hormones regulate your blood sugar. Glucagon makes your blood sugar go up, and insulin makes your blood sugar go down. Okay, so you eat something and it's got sugar in it. This is detected as the blood goes by the pancreas. The pancreas says, oh my gosh, you just ate a bunch of sugar, and out comes insulin. Insulin goes to the cells and opens those glucose transporters, and the glucose goes from your blood and into your cells, and your cells are all happy because they're full. But you don't eat for a while and your blood sugar goes down and your brain's like, uh-oh, need some blood sugar, need some sugar, and your brain really, really will send strong signals for you to go eat something. But in the meantime, your liver's like, oh my goodness, we don't want the sugar to go down, and starts screaming, and the pancreas will release some glucagon and the liver will start to produce it or release some glucose so that your brain stays happy. Both glucagon and insulin target the same cells, the muscle, fat, and liver. And in the case of glucagon, it causes a release of glucose from those tissues, also release of fatty acids and sometimes even amino acids to try to get that energy back in your blood. And insulin targets the same three, muscle, fat, and liver cells, okay, and says, hey, there's a lot of sugar, you need to store it. So it sucks it in. The fat cells get fatter, the muscle cells get bigger, and the liver takes up that glucose. Ironically, it also helps you absorb amino acids and fats too, so it's not just sugar that makes insulin go up, or insulin also increases the absorption of those, but it's generally thought of as the blood sugar that causes the amount of insulin to be released and glucagon to be released. So they balance each other out. Another hormone from the pineal gland back up into the brain is melatonin. Melatonin is regulated by the sun. It increases the release of melatonin when it's nighttime and decreases during the sun or sunnier times. Not that humans use it anymore, but it's thought to play a role in like seasonal breeding. Animals, get pregnant in the fall and have babies in the spring because that's when, there's stuff to eat for like deer. Thought to play a role in migration of birds. They know when to fly south or when to fly north, depending on whether it's spring or fall. But we don't have timing like that. However, there are things, for example, boys start puberty at age 12. How does the brain know they're 12? And they think that the melatonin going up and down, we have a little clock in our brain in the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus, and that helps us keep time. Also, menopause in women happens about the age 50, give or take. How does the brain know we're 50? Again, they think it's melatonin. Some people take melatonin to help them sleep, but if you look on the web, melatonin will save you from absolutely everything. Lots of people take this as a supplement for a variety of things. You should be careful with taking supplements, however. Anyway, melatonin, regulated by the sun cycle. And I think the last hormone that we have on the list today is leptin. Leptin is secreted by fat cells, so not really a gland. Again, one of these hormones that they have found, in the last 40 years and didn't realize that what it did for a long time. But it turns out the fatter you are, the more leptin you make, and it goes to your brain and tells your brain you're full. Again, trying to balance intake with weight. It also increases your metabolism a little. In fact, when they first found this, they thought, oh, we can cure obesity, we can give everybody shots of leptin. And it doesn't work very well like that. Turns out we don't eat just because we're hungry or not hungry. We like to eat because it's just fun to eat. It works really well in mice, but it doesn't work very well in people. Okay, so that is the list of hormones. Again, that list can be found. There's a summary list in a blank one that you can fill out and memorize in your lab manual. So check that study sheet out. That would really help. There's some good reviews out there. Don't be afraid to use them. And I will see you for Module 3.